Hey everybody, coming at you from my gear room. Now, today we are going to try to rehandle a machete. Alright, now the candidate is the Cold Steel Jungle Machete. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this machete. From here to here, I love it. From here to here, I hate it. That's the love-hate relationship. This handle's horrible. I hate it. I hate everything about it. Handles are supposed to have a palm swell. It means they're bigger in the middle. This thing had a dip in the middle, so I wound up putting all this tape all over it. And then it's got this stupid thing right here that just seems like it's always rubbing your hand. And then the blade, the actual grind, starts here. So when you choke up on it, you had to hold back here. So I put all this tape on it so that I could choke up on it for carving right here. So we're going to get rid of this handle. We're going to attempt to put a nice micarta handle on it. Alright, so I'll show you what I bought to do this with. One of the things I love about this machete, I'm used to 1075 or 1095. This is the only 1055 machete that I'd ever got, and I was amazed. It took forever to get an edge on it, but once you get an edge on it, it keeps an edge forever, and I love that. Well then, whatever the factory grind is here, I left, but right here, I made it a little bit more, I don't know what you would call it, acute, by about 10 degrees, this little section so I could carve, and that's another reason why I was wanting a longer handle. But anyway, I went to the blade show in June, and I bought 2 sticks of this micarta. It's like a canvas and a olive drab. The actual name of it is olive drab. I'm getting old, I gotta get my glasses. Let's see. Alright, made in the USA. This is black, olive drab, and natural 2-ply canvas micarta. And you can kind of see it's got stripes on it there. It's just got the different colors, and it's got like a tan looking color on that side and then like a greenish looking color. I got that, and then I got some liner material, and then I'm going to use stainless steel pins. And I bought those 2. Those are 3/8 thick. And then I bought this. This is $45 for a giant sheet, but it's not quite as thick. I'm not sure how these are. I think these are 3/8 thick, and I think this is about 5/16 thick. But anyway, it's olive drab on one side, and it's got like it's similar, but it doesn't have a sticker, and it's like striped. So if I screw this up, I've got this to work with, and the sheath has a Cold Steel, I think it's called a Sportsman Light, Outdoorsman Light. And see, I might take that rubber handle off of it if this works out good, and I may put some of this handle material on it. That way it'll be a matching set. So, alright, enough jibber jabber. Let's go out to the shop and see if we can destroy this handle and remove it. First things first, let's get rid of this lanyard. Won't need it. You can see a little bit better out here how I've taped this up, and the grind starts here. And I'm going to pull. This is some pretty thick. This is that thick insulating tape. This is not just regular. I don't think this is just regular electrical tape. This is that thick. Yeah, this is that thick insulative kind. So I'm going to pull a few wraps off here, and I'm going to put it. I'm going to use that again on the sharp edge right here. That's something pretty smart to do whenever you're working on a machete like this. And so I sharpened on this thing for forever to try to get this finish on this blade what I wanted it to. Now you can kind of see I tried grinding on this handle, and this handle, it was horrible, and that's why I covered it with the tape, is because I tried to shape it as best as I could. Alright. Oh, I even polished this part. I didn't even realize that. This is probably a boring part, but look, I even polished this part right here before I did the tape on it so that I could hold it with my fingers so I could choke up on it. But see, this thing, see, it had a dip in it right here. I don't know why I had a dip. You're supposed to have what's called a palm swell, and you can see I tried grinding here and here, and this part was a little bit better, but I just can't get over this. That is in the way. I can't stand that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some of this tape and I'm going to tape up this edge right here so that my hand will be protected and I ain't got to worry about getting cut. See, I got that real heavy tape on there, but it's not sticking real good, so I'm reinforcing it with a little bit of blue tape to hold it on. Once I get this couple of layers of this on, then we'll start removing the handle. Alright, I got plenty of tape on here. I got blue tape on top of the heavy black tape. I got a rag in my vise right here. We're going to clamp this thing down just like this. Now, I have tried sanding on these composite handles before, and it just doesn't work. It just turns into goo, and it makes it a mess. I think it's better just to kind of cut it off slowly. Sometimes you can saw it off, but I got to noticing that this spine is pretty close to the top, so what I'm going to do, and I always wear cut-proof gloves. Hex Armor is my favorite for doing this kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is up here on this edge is I'm going to try to trim away a little bit of this so I can see. Yep. And see, I'm starting to see a little bit of the steel. Now I'm just going to take a regular old block plane, and it takes a while, but you can remove. It might be, yeah, it's set too deep. You can see how I'm peeling that plastic off. But I'm going to set this blade here a little bit, not quite so deep, a little more shallow, so I can take thinner edges off. This is a very, very slow process, but as you can see, I'm pulling up a lot of plastic. Look, I've already exposed the spine. That's perfect, but I didn't cut the paint off. What I'll do is I'll cut what I can with this thing. I don't know, let's see what the mower does. Problem with the mower is it can really dig in if it's super sharp, but this is kind of dull. And I'd really rather mess this thing up than I would. Look at that. Look at that, look at that. I'm exposing the spine. I feel like as long as I'm not cutting the paint off the spine right here, then I'm not damaging my knife. So I'm just going to continue cutting on this all the way down until I expose the spine all the way to here. Alright, I switched over to my Martini because it's much sharper. I need to put a different edge on it anyway. But I got this thing pretty much exposed now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to see if I can. Look at that. Ah, now we're talking. I don't really want to bend it, but I do want to separate it. I bet I think it's blow molded. It's either blow molded or glued. Oh, look at that success. Look at that. Oh, they blow molded it through some holes because it snapped right there. I need to look and see how thick this is. I might could get by with using the thinner material. Oh, look, it's got holes all in it. Now, I can tell now this handle's not going to be big enough. I can tell it's not going to be big enough this way, and it's curved down too far. So I'm going to wind up having to do some TIG welding on this thing. Now, there's a method for that. See if I can beat this the rest of the way off. You can see the fractures in it. See if I can pry it off. Oh yeah, it came right off. That's the end of that handle. Alright, so we got a cold machete, blank. Let's go from there. Seems like I've run into an issue with this. This is one of the original designs that I'd liked for this thing, and it kind of sort of, see, the original handle stopped here, and I wanted the handle to be a lot longer. And see, this thing would kind of, see, it would pretty closely follow the curvature right there of the back. Pretty close, alright? But the problem with that is if you follow that curvature with this straight piece, so you're going to wind up wasting a lot and you're not going to really have enough here. And this thing dips down real far. I like this one, the way it's got these dips in it, but this is too much of a dip here, and so I thought about that. I like this. That's what this is based off of, but it's too tall here for this. And when you put that curve in there, see, when you put that curve in, it makes it dip down even more past this material. And this really dips down way past this material. See, if you put the curve in it. So my only guess is if I want to do this, I'm going to wind up having to cut 4 pieces of this and stack it up and glue it together, because this just ain't going to be thick enough for a machete. Well, luckily I've got a big piece, so, you know, whatever. If it doesn't work, I'll throw it away and go with some other design. See, this design would work. I like this design, and it would work because this is pretty straight. I could actually make it, you know, much taller, but the problem with that is when you look at this, if you put this here like this, see, look how much you're going to wind up cutting off. Look how much you would wind up having to add. Now, I don't mind adding a little bit, but I don't like cutting a whole lot off. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm settling for this piece here because it kind of follows this curvature right here. And what I'll have to do, I don't know if I want to add this close to the blade or not, but there's a way of welding this. You put ice up here. You put ice or a cold pack up here, and then you slowly weld with a alloy type rod. And say I'd have to add that amount to the back. But with this design, I can use 2 of the holes. I can use that hole and that hole. I might could use that hole. And that's what I might do. You know, I may glue it together and just use these 3 holes. I don't know if I got to put one in the middle or not. It may weaken it. I don't know. So, you know, this one's got 3 holes. So, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 4 of these out, rough cut them, because these are way bigger than what they should be. Wait a minute. It's this way. See, this is way bigger than it should be because I'm giving it some room for sanding. That's going to be the sawing template. But I'm going to cut 4 of these out and then glue them together and let them set overnight. Then we can start getting more into shaping the handle, and then I figure out what to do to this. This is a very unorthodox method having to add to this thing, but I figured out how to do it. Alright, I got 4 of these scribbled out. I got enough material that I could probably do maybe a couple of more knives. Of course, now I've got this thick stuff that I can use for something else. But anyway, I wanted an extra long handle for this one. I wanted it a lot longer than this one. You can see the difference in the factory one. See, it's a lot longer. And I'm not limited by this stupid thing being in the way. I can either hold it up here, or I can hold it back here, choke up here, back here. But what I did is I laid this down and drew around it, laid it down, drew around it, and then I flipped it over and did this one and this one. That way when I glue it, the layers will be right, because one side's like a olive and then one's green. That way I won't have a double green or a double olive. Now I'm going to take it outside tomorrow in the daylight. I don't want to do it in here. And I'm going to saw these out with a jigsaw, and I'm going to wear a dust mask. It's dark, full of mosquitoes outside tonight, so that's all for tonight. Rigid cuts wood, metal, or plastic. See how this does. Just a plain jigsaw. masking glasses. Alright, now let's see here. Whew. Take off the old mask. Now this ought to be, that ought to be plenty enough left for a knife or two. Now I think these is going to turn out better, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I got B and B, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to rough sand this side, rough sand this side, and I got them labeled because I want to glue the green side to this side. So now I'm going to have a big old 5/8 thick blank for one side, and then this is the other one. So you'll be welding sand, gluing the green to the tan. Alright, I'm going to go sand these and glue these. Now, what I meant by rough sanding was I meant to get rid of this so that I could glue these together, because see, this outside is real slippery and shiny, and the contact cement won't stick to that as well. But if you rough it up, it'll stick a little bit better. And I'm not only am I wearing gloves to keep this dust from irritating me, but the oil from my skin, I want to keep this, I don't want to have any oil from my skin on there. So you see, it's like I say, tan side to green side. And I got a board with sandpaper glued to it. And you just sort of drag it across it. You see, they'll make a nice surface for that glue. See how this is still shiny? You're going to make sure and rough that all up. Before you put the contact cement on here, you want to make sure that you've got them lined up right. Now this stuff here says contact cement bonds permanent contact, brush applicator flex bond, water resistant when dry, interior exterior. You're supposed to put this stuff on and let it sit for 15 minutes. Actually, I need to go get a stick and stir that up. Alright, I got me a little stick here and I stirred it up because I didn't want to take no chances on it not being stirred up properly, because I don't want to do this twice. Now it ain't got to be a real super thick coat, because I'm going to squeeze out the excess when I put it together. Alright. And make note of the time. It is 10:30. So yeah, this stuff's a lot runnier now. Alright. The instructions said no more than 15 minutes, but it said until it's no longer glossy. These ain't glossy no more. So now this is the hard part here, and this is also why I made them oversized, is because it said that they contact instantly. So let's hope that I got them. All right, you got a couple of seconds there to move around. All right, look at that. Now I got a 5/8 thick giant piece that I can sand on. This is pretty much my first micarta handle. Alright, so let's put this on one end. One here. One here. And then, let's see, let's put a little one in the middle. And one in the middle. That ought to bond. All right, now do the other one. All right, that went pretty successful, I thought. So that's all for today. I'm gonna let them bond, and then we'll move on to the next part of the project tomorrow. All right, it's been a couple of days, so what we're gonna do is pull these out. And now the first thing that I want to do is I want to sand the outside so that each side will be symmetrical. See how some of these are uneven? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it like, I'm going to clamp, clamp these together. And then I'm going to sand all of this all around on the outside. I'll put it together with a couple of C-clamps. Just like that. Oh. Now, if you've ever wondered why knife makers charge $200 to $300 for custom knives, just spend some time sanding on Micarta. Believe me, they earn every penny they make. There's so much more fun things to do. But anyway, all right, I got the outside shaped, and then I'm going to shape this surface later after I have the shape of the machete made. So now I'm going to show you the next step. So these things are shaped pretty much just like I want them, and they're plenty thick enough, because it's only really going to be thick here and kind of thick in the middle, because I'm going to put a serious dip right here and right here so that there'll be a palm swell. But anyway, now that that's done, the next part is the controversial part that a lot of people won't really agree with, but this is what it looked like before. Alright. Well, I need more material, so I cut this piece out, and I'm going to bevel it here and bevel it here, and I'm going to weld it in. You're going to weld it? Yes, I'm going to weld it. They make a special alloy rod that you can put an ice pack right up here to keep this cool so that the heat doesn't zoom that way, and then you can weld all this. Alright, so I'm going to weld that, and then this is basically shaped to the way I want it, and that thing is going to fit on there. And see that the edge is still right here. That way I'll be able to take a sharpening stone and still sharpen all the way up to the edge, and I can choke up on it, or I can grab it here for chopping power. And then once this is welded, I'll cut off this little piece of the factory that don't need to be there, and then I'll grind all this to match. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the factory holes here. For here, I got a carbide tip reamer, and I'm going to ream that out just a little bit for 1/4 inch thick, and then I'm going to use this for 1/4 inch thick, and then I'm going to weld a little plug in there and put 1/4 inch thick right in there. And I think instead of using liners, I'm just going to glue the handles to it, and then I'm going to have these 3 pins beaten in, because I'm going to ream the holes to a precise size. So I'm going to grind all this and fit it and weld it, and I may show you the setup for the weld, but then you probably won't see this again until this is welded on. Alright, so I have the piece ground and fitted and beveled, and I got this little piece in, and then I got all these clamps on here. Now, one of the things about welding on this stuff right here, this is the part that horrifies knife makers, because they're like, oh, you can't weld on something that's heat treated. No, you can't weld up here on the cutting edge up here, but where the handle part is back here, as long as you stay pretty far away from the cutting edge, you're going to be okay. And now it takes a special rod, a 680 alloy, and this is a rod that's made, this is what tool and die makers use for welding sections of tool and dies and molds that are already hardened. And I was a tool and die maker for 8 years, and so I've used this rod a lot, and I know it works. So, and another thing is, you want to, all these clamps, you want to clamp it down to big chunks of aluminum, because this is an excellent heat sink. And so what you do is you weld a little bit and let it cool, weld a little bit, let it cool, weld a little bit. You don't want to get everything real hot. So this is fit, and this little hole in here is fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to weld a little bit at a time, and then it'll cool off, and then I'll come back tomorrow and start grinding the shape of the handle for the metal part for my micarta. Alright, and I'm using a process called TIG welding. You have complete control. That way the heat comes from this tungsten, and you'll add the amount of rod that you want as you're welding along. See? Alright, one side is welded. And see the tape didn't even get melted. And I kept my finger right in here, and it didn't even get warm anywhere near the cutting surface. Now, one thing that I'm glad that I'm picking up on camera, there's a thing called HAZ, heat affected zone, and what it is you see this little color, right? There's about a 1/8 inch. There it is. I think I can see it on camera now. Right there, there's about an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch zone all around the weld. That's called the heat affected zone. And what that is that has made this area soft. Now up in here, the paint didn't even melt. I controlled it. See, there it is. It stops right there. And so as long as that doesn't spread out across the blade, see, there's more of it right there. As long as it, and see, this is a long way from the cutting edge. So it should be safe. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind this weld flat. After it cools, I'm going to unclamp it and grind this flat, and then flip it over and grind the other side. And then I'll be ready to start fitting the handle. So after hours and hours and hours and hours of weld, cool, weld, cool, weld, cool, I finally got it looking like something. And I'm going to leave these, all the surface of it ground really rough, because that'll help the glue stick to it, to the handles. Now, against my better judgment, I went ahead and welded a little piece here because I needed to. There was no metal there to fill in. But this paper, the tape here, I managed to get it to where it just kind of blackened, but it didn't actually melt. So it didn't get that hot. So now the next thing to do is I'm going to lay this on, and I'm going to get it to where, close to where I want it to be, and then I'm going to cut around it with a magic marker, and see all the excessive all around it. Now comes the time to grind off all the excessive. It's pretty much even with the top, but I'm going to grind that excessive off and smooth it out, and then I'll be ready to attach the handles, or at least put the holes in for the handles. So, we got our grinding done. Look, we got all of our grinding done, the shaping done. Now, this is the original hole here and here, and this was the big hole that I ground a plug in. I welded a plug in and I put in a hole, and I decided to put an extra hole down here at the bottom. I don't want one up here because holes up here weaken things. Now, I ground all up inside here, and I had to remove this and regrind this edge, but everything's looking good so far. So now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp one side to this. I'm going to clamp one side to it, and then I'm going to drill through this side all the way through, and then I'll put the other one on, and then I'll drill through these holes all the way through, and then I'm going to put temporary bolts in to hold it in while I start shaping everything. See, it's starting to shape up now. Alright, so the drill bit gave it the rough hole. And then I'm going to do the finish size with a reamer. And what a reamer does is a reamer does a precision hole. A drill bit just puts a just a hole in it, but it's not real precise sized. It could be oversized a little bit. Could be on size, could be undersized, but a reamer makes it precise. So I'm going to do all the holes on this side of the handle, and then I'm going to put the other handle on and do all them. And then we'll be ready to bolt the handle together and do the finish sanding. So it's finally starting to look like something. What I've done is I've got all the holes are done and the handles are on, and I got them bolted down tight. So the next step, as you can see, there's a few places here. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but this is a little bit low and this is a little bit high. The metal part's a little bit high, and these just aren't perfectly matched up. And I think there's a low spot here, a low spot here, a high spot here. So I'm just going to take this on the sander with it bolted together, and I'm just going to run this across it a few times, just like this, and I'm going to flatten it out good. Then once it's flattened out good, then I'm going to unbolt it, and then I'm going to start putting a taper around here. And then once that taper is done, then I can start sanding on this flat side. So from here on out, it's just a whole bunch of sanding, and then I'll permanently install them with the pins. All right. Alright, so that's what they look like. Now I know exactly why knife makers charge so much for these contoured handles. You just kind of stick them together and make sure that they're somewhat even, like the thickness is here. And see, this is the palm swell I was talking about. I got pretty big hands though, so I wanted a big handle. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick them together, and I'm going to wet sand all around the top and the ends and the bottom, but not the sides. I'll do that. I'll do the sides after they're on the machete. But the reason that I'm doing these before I mount it is because I went ahead and repainted the edge of the blade black. See, that way I ain't even going to use a liner. I'm just going to glue it straight to it. That way we'll have that nice definition of that color right there. So next thing is just to wet sand everything and then drive the pins in, and it'll be finished. Now, as fine as I'm going to go with this is a 120, because after all, it is a handle. I don't want it too slick. I want a little bit of a grip to it, because the more I use it, the slicker it's going to get. I thought I was going to have to glue these handles, but these pins are so tight since I ring the holes instead of drilling them that I believe these pins are just going to hold them. Alright, so I beat the pins in, and then I cut them off with a die grinder, and then I sanded them, and then I went over them with some sandpaper. But the job is not done yet. Look at that, isn't that awesome? I could choke up on it right here, make feather sticks, or I can grab right there on that palm swell and chop. That's awesome. Now, I didn't even use any glue because these things were so tight they bent, and I had to cut them off short to drive them in the rest of the way. But that thing, it ain't going nowhere. That's awesome. But the finishing touch, the last step. A friend of mine that's a gunsmith, I was talking to him about this, and I had cut off a little piece of this, And I said I wasn't real happy with the color, and he said, you want to darken it up and richen it up? And I said, yeah. Well, he had this stuff that's called True Oil, and he bought a quart of it, and it's for laminated gun stocks. And he said, I'll give you a little bit. And he said, a little bit goes a long ways. And he said, just take it and just rub it all over and let it soak in. And he said, you can put as many coats as you want, but if I was you, I'd start with one coat. And he said, just kind of rub it all over. So that's what I'm going to do. You can already tell that there's a massive difference in it. He said it makes it a little bit grippy too. Look, with, without. So I'm just going to rub this all over, and then we're going to take the tape off the blade and see how well it chops. Hopefully it won't break in half from the welds. Alright. Finally finished. That True Oil took the paint right off of it. I don't care, I'll touch it up later. It really brought the color out of it and made it grippy. Alright, let's see how it feels here with carving. So I've choked up on it right here. It's very, very comfortable. That log is all crooked. If that log was a little bit more stable, I'd probably do better with it. But that thing, it feels great carving right there. Probably needs to be sharpened. So now let's choke up on it right here. Let's chop a little bit. The main idea behind this, I know how it's going to feel, is I want to make sure that the thing don't break. Man, that thing feels great to the hand, and it didn't loosen up a bit. That is wonderful. I wonder if this will carve this thing. May not, since it's round. Yeah, it is a little bit. Always does better on split sticks. Alright, that's awesome. Alright, well, I'm very, 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 very happy with how that turned out. That is wonderful. Wonderful. Now I know why these things cost so much. Oh, these pins, I had to beat them in. I beat them so hard they bent. So I know they're not going anywhere. That thing's awesome. Alright, hope you had fun watching this experiment. Hope you enjoyed it. Get out, experiment, do things. Buy you some micarta. If you got a favorite knife or machete that you hate the handle, take the dive. Take the plunge. That's awesome. Alright, hope you enjoyed it, and we shall see you in the next one.